show that massive defect to the back of the head. No massive defect to the back of the head. There's a chunk of bone here that's sort of on a hinge and blown outward, but there's no massive defect to the back of the head. Now, when the House Select Committee reinvestigated, the claim was now made by the physicians that they'd been wrong with this lower entry wound, which would have been right about here where you see this clip, but rather that it had occurred upward right at the top of the head, the cowlick. That's a 4-inch discrepancy. That's an enormous discrepancy, and it's very suspect. Notice in particular, you can see this alleged hole in the diagram done by one-eyed docs, but you can't see it here in the photograph. In fact, you never see it in the photograph. You only see it in drawings, and in drawings, of course, you can add anything you want. Not only that, but the clip has raised suspicions that what we have here is the back of JFK's head, but you have a scalp that's pulled down over the massive defect, and it's held in place by this clip. Here's one of the more disturbing juxtapositions of the photograph I just showed you, okay, with this photograph, which Robert Groden has color photos of these. Look at that massive, floppy, gunky stuff in his hair. Look at the length of the hair. This led us to propose, and I suspect David Mandick fashioned the question, when the physicians were deposed by the Assassination Records Review Board. The question was raised to Commander Humes. Was the subject given a shampoo and a haircut during the autopsy? And Humes, of course, responded, no, of course not. No, 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 he said. But look here, how are you going to account for this? Look at that head, very clean, you know, what you might expect, and this all monkey glow. How can that be the same patient during the same autopsy, right? I mean, so here you have manifest evidence of the fakery, the forgery of some of the autopsy photographs. This is another physician's drawing of the back of JFK's head, which is widely regarded as highly accurate, and notice how it does correspond very well with what we had from Charles Crenshaw. Here now you have many, many witnesses, and there are more than 40 witnesses who attested to this massive blow-up to the back of the head, and look how consistent they are at its location. It's not the top of the head, it's not the side of the head, it's in the back of the head. It's right about where you'd rest your head if you were reclining in a bathtub. Great consistency. These are witnesses from Dealey Plaza, from Parkland, even from Bethesda, okay, and includes the FBI agents. Now, if you look at the autopsy on the x-ray on the left, this is what was purported to be JFK's skull x-ray, and it was on the basis of this x-ray, which does not show a massive blowout to the back of the head, that all of those eyewitness reports, including the physicians who made diagrams, were discounted. They were discounted because the autopsy x-rays did not show it. Well, we happen to be fortunate to have an expert on x-rays who gained admission to through the Kennedy family attorney to go into the National Burke Marshall, to go into the National Archives to study the x-rays. And because he had a background in physics, he was able to employ a simple technique called optical densitometry, where by measuring the amount of light that passes through the x-ray, you could calculate the relative density of the objects whose exposure to radiation created the images. The denser you are, the more radiation the object absorbs, and the less goes onto the plate, so that when it's developed, it becomes very white. So the denser the object, the whiter the result, the least dense, the darker. So you can see the dark areas, and I'll come back to them momentarily, are indicative of virtually complete lack of any mass. What David did when he went through and found there was an area here at the back of the skull, which he called area P for patch, that was far too dense to be human bone. So that, as I sometimes put it, unless Jack Kennedy was a bonehead, this was not a naturally occurring phenomenon, okay? Area P. Now look at area P. Very, very interesting. Now, I had surmised that there's so much study absorption with a Zapruder film right up to frame 313, where you have the blowout, and you have the blood splatter, and you have the blob, that maybe the conspirators hadn't paid a lot of attention to frames after that. So I started looking at them, and in fact, in frame 374, you can see the massive blowout to the back of JFK's head right here. Right here. I'm astonished that I was the first person to notice this. But observe how it corresponds to the area P that David had detected, and to the Crenshaw diagram and other diagrams that we have available. Now this is an anterior posterior front to rear. We were looking at the lateral cranial from the right side. And what David discovered too was that there was a metallic object that was on the back of this skull x-ray. But what I want to point out here is look at all this dark area that indicates a virtual complete absence of mass. Remember I said the blob, if Jack had been hit in the back of the head by high velocity, then it might have taken out a lot of mass. They appear to have prepared parallel tracks in the evidence, depending on what account you wanted to promote, or to mislead investigators so they become very confused. Because this lack of mass here at the right front is perfectly consistent with what you might have expected from the blob images if the blob images had been authentic. This is another study David did. He discovered there's a distribution of metallic particles here throughout the skull, and the heavier particles travel further in accordance with the laws of physics. This is from a wound to the right front that was with a frangible or exploding bullet that set up shock waves that blew Jack's brains out the back of his head, which had already been weakened by a previous shot to the back of the head. In fact, the death of the president was actually the result of the interaction of all three shots, and I'll now explain how the throat wound affects